that right, Adam? And we're recording? Yep, mine's recording. Okay.
Good evening. It's Monday, August 14th, and this is a meeting of the Planning Board. The Planning Board is now in session. The first item on the agenda is a discussion item, MBTA Communities, update on action scheduling of public outreach forum. I think this is you, Colleen.
Better? Alrighty, so let me see if I can find here. Just had something up. Well, I just wanted to start with this. But so as far as the MBTA communities, I have been in touch with Lily, who was our engagement coordinator, and she is already booked for the Wednesday that she said she was free. The 27th, yes. And I'm not 100% sure if she'll be able to be here in person, but the 21st of the week before, which I think is a Wednesday or Tuesday. I didn't bring my calendar with me. Maybe it's the 19th. I'll grab my thing. I left it in the office. I was running late.
Yeah. So the 21st is a Thursday.
So the 27th, she's here, and then I think the 21st, yes. Yeah, she said that's the best day if we wanted her here in person. And so if that works for everybody,
Of September.
yes.
Yes.
You just have to check with Lisa. right?
And that was for the one of the workshops.
Yes,
Correct?
that'll be the very first one. And so that's why I said, we'd really love to have you here in
Agree.
person.
So that's August, sorry,
September.
September, it's Thursday, the 21st.
Yes,
Correct.
That will be the forum number 1.
At what time?
We have not picked that, but I've so if I share my screen, hold on a second here.
Is there a time frame that the planning board has a preference for? And what has worked in the past with the public, like with the master plan, was 6:30 a good date? Because everyone wants to eat dinner first and then go out.
Yeah, I think
So
it's
maybe
30.
we should target 6:30.
Yep.
And should we count on maybe that's the same time for the second forum as well? Keep it consistent?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we'll pick a venue, and the venue choices are,
So the first one, Mimi and I had talked about it before, and I recall us saying the senior center was for the first one. And then the second one I have here at the townhouse, only because we hadn't discussed it yet. So I was trying to put something. Can you share my screen, madam? That's the issue.
can you share it? So you can't get Zoom up there.
Only if I do the Airtame. Let me see.
So one of the questions is whether we should have this videoed, or recorded. The forum should be. So if we do it outside of the senior center, is Sam available? To maybe
yeah.
record one of the meetings? We'll have to check with Terry. If Sam is available for those 2 dates at 6:30 PM.
Do they record at the senior center?
If
I know.
Can you remotely record? Like you do at the town meeting? We'll check with Terry.
if
Otherwise,
not
we'll
there,
move it
we
here.
do the police station. That's all set up to record.
Oh, the police station as well. All right. So first choice will be, we'll check with Terry if they can do remotely, and we'll do the senior center. And because it's nice to keep it consistent so the people know where to go. And then if that doesn't work, we'll try the police station,
When's the second one?
27th?
September 27th. So venue number 1 choice will be senior center. if Sam's available to record. Number 2 will be the public safety building, where Sam is already set up to record and if they're available. Again, if they're available. And then number 3 will be back here, which is a little more formal. Is everybody on board with that?
So we had 2 forums and 3 workshops. So the 2 forums we were going to do in September, right? And then the workshops were going to be the working meeting. So do we need more than 3 forums? Just, so on our strategy, we were just going to have 2 forums and then roll out the workshop.
We are gonna have like all the public hearings too.
Yeah. And the workshops are really going to be the sticky note kind of presentation style, the maps.
Okay, so the workshops will be the interactive.
Correct. And they're later, once we
Holding
get through the 2 forums.
The forums will just be presentation, informational, question and answer type thing.
Correct.
So no special exhibits or, okay, because I think that Lily Link from CHAPA, she was going to be the resource to provide us with examples of how to pull feedback out of the population. Whether it's a survey townwide or whether it's a map with buttons, because it sounds easy, but you can't just, sometimes you can't just put stickies there because then they fall off at the end of the night and then you have nothing, right? You need something to track it, whether it's some kind of avenue to do that. And those will be the workshops.
Yes.
Okay, and the first venue is where Lily Link from Chapel will be attending, and I think she's preparing a zoning 101
Perfect.
presentation, right? And
Yeah, that's what she suggested. She wanted to go, she said, I can certainly do the zoning 101, kind of let people know what it's all about. And Mimi and I discussed a little bit and we want a smaller version of that.
kind of geared towards Southborough.
Yeah, and then
demographic.
questions and answers, but
So I'm visioning that the first forum will be relatively straightforward with, we should get that PowerPoint presentation from CHAPA ahead of time so we can kind of be.
oh, we have
prepared.
the zoning 101. It was part of the
The one that's been shrunken down, like a more modified version. Well, we'll work on that. And then we'll anticipate it'll be that presentation with a decent Q&A timeframe.
And what I would suggest is some sort of FAQ so people can have a walk away, or we have some sort of, I don't know how difficult the website is to like put up some sort of website that would be able to be informational. You were in the process of developing that, right?
Yeah, and I
we
can
already
pull it
have
up right now.
something to make sure we have FAQs, and I think we can kind of leverage that forum for hearing what people's common questions are. So we could kind of
make our own.
right, consolidate what we hear and then, put that up afterwards and then potentially with the recording. But I think, my suggestion is just keeping it to like an hour and then do a 35-minute presentation and then open it up to Q&A, and then maybe have, if the planning board's there, depending if we'll have to post if we're all attending, but maybe like specific comments or feedback to the planning board. And like having a little panel or something where we can address people, that would help.
That'd be great.
So the planning board will post agenda. And then the
Yes.
planning board will have a platform for kind of a panel. And then to answer questions and provide the.
And part of the plan was to maybe put out the note cards, the mailings for the inform. So now we'll have the 2 good dates confirmed. Those should be on those mailings. And then I can help you too on kind of next.
And these are kind of just an idea of what the words kind of I wanted to put in the mailing. Definitely need to dress it up a little bit, but let me go back to that page.
So as the planning board, is there a consensus that we send these out in postcard style for the 2 forums? And do you want like one postcard for the 2, so it's 2 forums and 3 workshops? We'll hold the 2 forums first, correct? And then the forums will be announced with a postcard, or would you prefer a mailing? Either way, the postcards, we do have an idea of what that might cost from a printer.
Yeah, when we talked, I mean, my suggestion was a postcard with both dates on it.
Yep.
And then mailers to the specific abutters on the 5th, right at the trail, like right within the not the trail,
The area. of
The train station.
Train station,
Yeah.
the half mile.
But I thought
That's within the half mile that we would actually write a personal letter letting them know that this is happening and it's in their area directly.
okay,
So those would be those would be a slimmer mailing, and then the postcards would go out to basically,
everybody.
yeah, people, and we thought maybe town voters, especially like pull that list of the people who attend town meeting and south of Route 9.
So not the entire town, just
Yeah,
voters from last town meeting and
and south
South.
of Route 9.
of Route 9. Yeah.
I think we could look at the cost of that though, because I think if you do every door direct or something like that, it's
Yeah,
cheaper
that's-
than putting stickers on mail.
Yeah,
using
and-
getting
Oh, it
somebody to
is.
do
And that's,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
what, so that was what I was I was just gonna say that to you. That was sort of what I was picturing for the first mailing. And then the second mailing, which could almost be done in sync to those specific people. Either a little bit later or at the same time with a much more personalized letter, saying, hope you got our flyer, blah, blah, blah. This really affects your area.
But
Please
Marnie,
come.
to your understanding is that the postcard and the personal mailers are for forum number 1.
Both.
I mean,
Yeah.
for both, but they'll both be going out the door.
Yeah.
For this, to make sure the people know for 9/21 forum number 1, September
Exactly.
21st.
And these are kind of, I was just coming up with ideas of
What to put on the.
what to
post-
put on.
Yeah,
Let me see if I can switch this here. Oh, I'm having trouble with this here.
so you can have pretty fancy postcards, lots of colors. Some of the approaches I was thinking about is you can have like a soft approach where you say, this is MBTA communities, this is what it means, come find out. I'm not sure how that draws people in, or you pose a question like, where do you think you might, where would be the best, where do you think the best place would be? Like something to draw people in, not just like, if they just see a flyer that says MBTA communities, this is what it means, they'll be like, you gotta charge them with something.
And the point with marketing is a call to action. So there has to
Yeah.
be a specific call to action. So,
Yes.
yeah, so I mean, I can help you with kind of doing this and
Well, and that's what I'm kind of thinking. So is MBTA communities, multifamily zoning, it's coming. Help us make this happen and come to our information sessions.
Where would
Um,
you like to see this happen or something like that? Come and tell us.
Well, and that's below. So then we have, I put in something a little more formal with its House bill, blah, 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 and I can add to that, just so people know that it's a law. It was passed by, the legislature and signed by Charlie Baker. And then that we are a commuter rail community. What does this mean to you? Where should this by right family zoning be located? What will this do to my home's value? Because I've seen that on a couple of other websites for towns. And will this affect my taxes? Those are just some quick things. What if the residents of Southborough, what if the residents don't want this zoning in Southborough? There's another question. So those kind of things on a flyer, and then, with some sort of graphics or whatever, we can dress it up to make it pop. Does that sound about right?
I don't think we need to get into the specifics of House Bill and passed by Charlie Baker, just it's a state requirement that
You don't think having a House bill up there really makes people look?
I don't.
Well, and again,
yeah, unfortunately, I think that goes right to the recycling. bin.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, I can take some time too. And I did, separately, I have a graphic artist that can volunteer her time to help support this.
one that did
Yeah.
the
that- that
timelines,
Did
that
the
was
timeline.
wonderful.
Yeah, I think that we can kind of make it a little bit more polished.
Is
but
there a
I-
particular format as far as software? Is it a Word? Is there a separate?
So she'll
graph-
she'll use InDesign and then she'll import it to whatever you need and then get it to the printer. But I think we keep it simple.
Yeah.
And I think you actually just print it on like a really bright color, like a neon color postcard versus having too many colors. You
Okay,
just need to make it stand out and have some sort of call to action.
Yes.
okay. What do you think the major points are?
I say we table it and take it off.
Table it and do this all outside of
Yeah.
a meeting. Okay, that sounds good.
If the planning board gives us that authority.
Go nuts, Marnie.
This is Colleen, this is a great starting point. for this, to
Totally
take the
agree.
next
Thank you
step.
for.
Yeah, just
yeah,
trying to
thinking
give
through.
you an idea of what I'm thinking, if I'm on the right track.
Mhm.
That's really what I was looking for, so.
Yeah, so I agree with Marnie. You need a hook. It has to be a reason that someone's going to
Want to come.
come. Yeah.
KISS principle.
Yes, keep it simple.
Keep it simple, stupid. And I wanted to show you this one last thing. Um,
So while you're looking, I'm just going to give you another quick update. So Bowler has been given some additional tasking from the DHCD, currently known as another name. It's really long. I can't remember it right now, but it's EOELIC or something like that. Bowler is tasked to help us provide an updated map showing the areas. Once they're determined through the public outreach, they'll update the map and show those on a map more clearly. And then there's that spreadsheet with all the information that will be also updated based on where the public outreach takes the idea of where the town people, where the residents want to see it.
And that map, we can print a large map for the forums.
Yes, architectural side, up to east side.
Perfect. I think people want to be able to, kind of like a master plan, like you want to be able to kind of envision it and see it
Yeah.
in bigger picture.
And I was hoping that CHAPA might, with the services they're supposed to be providing, when it comes to those workshops, they provide some ideas like MAPC did for the master plan. During the master plan, MAPC actually came to the forums and had 2 or 3 little booths set up, and it, showed the people how they were supposed to interact. Because you can set it up there, but not everybody understands, because we're talking about all the time. They're not, so they might not know. So, and maybe some refreshments and things like that. And we do have ARPA funding in addition to the planning board funding that we set aside for this initiative. So any ideas are welcome to draw people in and get them to interact.
So Lexington, which is the first municipality that passed multifamily zone to comply with 3A, their outreach, they had tables with all the town maps, and they had people put stickies on them where they thought. And they had several different zones that added up to whatever they needed to.
This was Lexington, right?
Lexington.
Yeah, Lexington had a lot of public input, so,
Because they create little games
yeah.
for the people to be interested in answering, and kind of guides them. And
Yeah.
it's that little
Well, it was the
game
mapping
like that
thing.
makes it fun.
And that's recorded that you can watch the whole thing if you want.
Mhm.
If anyone else is as insane as I am.
So the PowerPoint that I wanted to just show real quick was the original one we had with the timeline, and we've sort of doctored it up a bit. And this is the zoning 101 that I got right from Lily Link at CHAPA, which we don't really need to go through a ton of it, but here's basically, these 2 pages are really basically what she's going to be talking about. So it's not much. And then she can help us with the rest. I thought this was a good version of a visual for zoning. It's kind of hard to find things that show zoning. So this is part of her 101.
So this will be very fundamental to the MBTA community.
Yeah.
It's a very beginning, yeah.
And this it explains the restrictive zoning. We can doctor this up anyway. These are really just pre-prepared. Why did it pass? Let's see. Zoning makes sense for Massachusetts. There's little videos we can do. Multifamily housing. I think what else? And this whole missing middle is really the core of what we're looking for. Which is what we found in Southborough on that residency site, that we already have a lot of this, which is shocking. So I think it's a good point.
We
to get
have
across.
some that we didn't know we did, but I wouldn't say a lot.
A lot more than I thought. Yeah. That's a valid statement.
And what would be helpful is if is this something Lily's going to be speaking to, or is this our presentation?
Um,
For a forum?
This is gonna be, I envision it being a dual thing, where she can talk
Forum.
about zoning, and she can talk about any of this.
Yeah,
You know, if we get stumped on something and she's heard it before, that's where she can really help. And almost like a pregame warm up of kind of the language we should be using and the attitude we should have and things like that. That's a lot of what she's talked about with us.
so I think that when you show a slide like the missing middle, that we should be able to speak to that, because we look at it and we kind of understand, but what is that? You know, I mean, people see this and, okay, that's great. I see small, bigger, bigger, bigger. It's a little bit like, explanation of that. And then, like Mimi was saying, how is that in Southborough? Like, to you, it seemed like a lot, to you, it's not a lot, but so what does it mean to Southborough? Where are we at? So if we could be prepared to.
Well, and just so you all know, this whole missing middle, I was a little shocked, was done by, was it AARP or AAA? It was AARP. For people that were downsizing, and they've sort of, one of the, webinars that I went to with Lily, they had the gentleman from AARP talking about it. And it was fascinating, you know, how everybody wanted the single family houses and, you know, but so restrictive that you're really taking up all the land. And that's where the price is. Land value causes everything to go up. So there's a lot of information behind just missing middle that we can pick and choose from. What else do we have here? And then we have the Southborough sort of examples.
And also, Colleen has started setting up that MBTA Communities web page through the planning board website. So it does right now have links to like mass.gov, what is MBTA, and some of those types of things. So we can probably
I'll
put a
pull it
link
up
to
real
this
quick.
PowerPoint, or the flyers should be linked up there.
So is there a slide in there for what if we don't do it?
I can add that by, so there was a letter from the Attorney General that came out. I'm not sure if you guys were aware of it, but we got it. It's in our files. It basically was saying that, you know, it is a law and it shall be conformed to, and could be some legal actions if towns choose not to,
Such as,
such as lawsuits. But nobody's done it yet either.
Yes, they have Town of Holden. Suit was just filed against them because they,
Oh, it did get
by
filed.
the
It
yes.
state?
would be the Attorney
I
General.
think it was by the town. I thought the town was suing the state.
Oh, the town's suing the state.
No, it was a resident, somebody,
And this is our young gentleman that's going to help us. And he's got a lot of information.
Just identify yourself.
Thank you. Good evening, James Nichols, Worley 94 Main Street. I was reading a bit about this. So the lawsuit was brought against the town of Holden because the town select board and their town council is arguing that the sections of the law that take away grants from municipalities that don't follow this law allows them to just withhold the changes to zoning, and in turn, they will not receive the funding from the state. But the law says municipalities shall, you know, I'm not a lawyer yet, but from my understanding, it's the legal requirement. So potential residents, someone who's interested in moving in, a current resident, and a group who I believe is called the Central Massachusetts Housing Alliance have all brought suit against the town of Holden. There were rumors that the town of Holden would sue the state first, but from people I've heard, that was immaterial. The town of Holden is not planning to countersue the state.
So just to read that back to you, it was a resident that sued their own town
Yes,
with the support of some outside group.
yes.
And that was
So that
to
might be a good
support.
thing to, you know, say, for example, this is what's going on in the town, because when this has come up in other more widely attended public meetings, it seemed like there was some considerable pushback and concern from the residents. So I think it would be prudent to put it out there like one angle that I always take with these things is it's better to control what we can control before it's forced upon us.
Got it.
And that could be, a theme that makes it a little more palatable. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So is there anything else I can add? That's most of what I know.
You're gonna be here, right? So,
And I don't think it's outside the realm of possibilities that down the road developers would sue towns that wanted to build multifamily housing, but the town didn't supply a zone.
well, and just so you know, I got a call from a developer and he was like, "Hi, Colleen." I'm like, "Who is this?" He was a developer that I worked with in the past in Chelmsford. And he saw the lot down by the train station that was up for sale. And he said specifically, "Will you guys be putting MBTA zoning there?" And I said, "Most likely, because that's the train station." So, and he's actually talking with the gentleman to buy it, to do something with that when the zoning does go through. So there's interest out there. And I think we all know that it'll probably get built here.
And I think the point is, much to your point, Mr. Stein, is that we can do everything that we can. We've put a strategy together. We're trying to inform the public. We can do as much as we can. We cannot convince people one way. I mean, we hopefully can educate them to vote in favor for it. But in the end of the day, it's going to be a vote at town meeting. And so
And that's
we at least will have everything documented that we've tried our best to try and, get the town to go the right way.
A simple majority, do we know, or a two?
simple majority. As long as there's no special permits and it's truly by right. And it does seem like the overlay is the easiest way to go here. What else is I gonna say? I think that's it. I mean, nobody has not passed it and sort of got stuck yet, so we don't know what's gonna happen with that. I mean, I don't think the town can be faulted for trying. But again, I'm not a lawyer. We shall see. Is there any other questions, or we're on the right track here?
Good job, thanks.
Yeah, so this is great. So we have our forum dates. Marnie's going to work on the hooky flyer.
Yeah, that's the big thing. I want to just, something that really catches somebody, makes them interested.
Perfect. Thank
Yep.
you.
One person.
Mr. Lit.
I just wanted to react to the graph slideshow from the point of view of someone who sits a little bit further back. I thought that certainly there's a lot of information in there that's useful, but I think in terms of organizing it, you really want to focus on what changes and what's driving that change, and have the, educational, what is zoning, what do the pictures look like as backup that you can call up when people have questions. Because I think if this is too long, people will tune out. And I think if the things to talk about, what's changing or what the impact is, are too late, people will be asleep when you get there. So just for what it's worth, I would think about organizing it in terms of, driving the attention points first. And by all means, don't throw out the backup material, but make it backup material. Don't make people sit through it up front.
Is there a map that shows the half mile included in, this is the slideshow that we used before, isn't it?
This is the one I've been throwing things into, and I'll be taking some out. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the one that I've been putting new information into, per Southborough. So
Are the old slides in this slide? Did you remove any of the slides?
yeah, this one does not have the timeline, I
So
don't think.
does it have the one with the radius of half mile around? the
That one we
railroad?
have, I can, obviously I can put it
It's
in.
in
I think that would be helpful too.
Okay, so, put that one,
Half mile radius slide.
location. It's-
Because that's the one thing we know, there has to be 10 acres in that area.
Yeah.
The rest is up
for
for
grabs.
grabs.
Right. Got this.
Which is 20%,
Is there anything else that,
right? The 10 acres represents
20%?
20% of the 50-acre total. Yeah, just recap. I remember.
And I don't know if you wanted to go into the affordable housing component of it unless it comes up. It might just confuse it at that point.
I think it's more backup. I think Mr. Litt's suggestions are very strong. I think you kind of have to like, what's in it for me? People want to know, why am I here? And so I think you have to just be really focused on how it will impact them and you know, what would happen between now and when it's passed. And I think being able to kind of refine that at a high level, showing the map of the 50, that 50 acres. I would actually show 50 acres around the train station. I would show that was the original. We now only have to deal with 10 and then find the other 40. And so that's where the future forums will be focused on, is to make sure that the town gets their input. But we really don't have an opportunity to change the 10. So I think you have to be really clear up front.
That's a good
Right.
point.
So there is an opportunity to lay out that 10 within the half mile.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we can put that wherever within that half mile, because there's far more than 10 acres
Oh,
within a
okay.
half mile.
And I think that, did the Bowler plan already represent that 10 acres around the railroad station, Colleen?
It did.
Yeah, so we have that already.
But you're saying that it could be laid out anywhere. We only have one
Yeah.
rendition of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I
We
think
have
it's
an option.
actually
one option exists.
Is the state doing any assistance in terms of feasibility with impact to traffic and schools?
So there's a lot of information
Services.
on that. That's like Marty said, backup information. The feasibility that they'll be doing is if you want to do 20% affordable, they will look it over for you to make sure that you have to submit a pro forma basically to make sure that,
So the town needs to do the feasibility,
well, that's what we could have Bowler do. We
Right.
have them again.
but the
for
state
another-
doesn't do that.
I think.
No, but they will look at it for you.
So just
Um,
going back to the Holden example, I don't know a lot about Holden, but from what I do know, I could see how a community like Holden and potentially Southborough, if the residents have the idea that we don't have the actual, infrastructure to support the results of this kind of zoning change, that we couldn't handle it, so to speak, then they might say, well, we're better off litigating than passing this.
So not to forget, though, that the area of the overlay is supposed to make it available to, it doesn't have to be built and buildable.
Oh, understood,
Just
but,
the area is what you're gonna say, this is where we allow it,
but
and
I
infrastructure.
can see how residents would say allowed means will happen, potentially.
Yeah.
and
So we need to know what we're getting ourselves into.
Mhm.
So I think the feasibility, you just said Bowler can do that for us. That's part of the,
Yeah, so they have, we have this, remember the big spreadsheet, it sort of shows us, when you pick
That's
any,
the compliance model.
yeah. Which is what they wrote up the bylaw, or the beginning of the bylaw that they started. But yeah, they're supposed to be able to run numbers for us. For us, it's a little easier because we're looking at probably just an overlay. And it's not mixed up with any other kind of, it's the easiest way to go, honestly.
But what exactly are you asking? Bowler would be asked.
I'm
tasked
just
to do like a
suggesting that
traffic
for our forum, we
study?
would want to be prepared,
Mhm.
as Mr. Litt mentioned, have the information in our back pocket about what this does to, on the high end of potential increase in population,
Mhm.
how it's going to impact enrollment in the schools, traffic.
Those kind of demographic,
Yeah, there's lots of studies on
topics.
that.
But you mentioned like traffic concerns. So would they? I'm not sure Bowler would be tasked to do like traffic studies or anything like that.
No, that would be
Within
that would be the builder along with the project.
at
would,
that
would be
time.
required to do a traffic study. But there's.
But if they
ton-
can do it by right. I mean, we're talking about.
Well, there will
But you can
there would
still
be
ask
site
for-
plan review.
Yeah, you still ask for a traffic study.
Your site plan review is not the same thing as a special permit.
Oh,
though.
no.
So we could have a traffic study that says the traffic's gonna be pretty bad. And not necessarily be able to do anything about it. So
Mm,
I don't know if there's a way for us to do something along the lines of, so we had the strip on Southville. If that got built out to the zoning max,
mhm.
what would that do to traffic on Southville?
What-
Between the hours of 7, 8?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you say, what, here's a max build out potential, here's worst case scenario, and I hate to use the term worst, but build out scenario. Assume this, once we have, I think once those areas are defined, maybe they could do something like that, but Bowler, I'm not sure they have a traffic engineer on board, that's a specific thing for a traffic engineer.
Right. Ironically, of course, the point of this is that they would use the MBTA.
That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
tell you. They'd all walk. No
I
one would even have a
understand.
car.
However,
Reality,
reality is.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I do have a ton of studies that are out there on
Okay.
multifamily with children in school and certain multifamily counts and how much traffic they add, because not everybody leaves at 8 AM. Not everybody works. 2-bedroom houses usually have young children, not necessarily in the school system. And those have been around for years, and there's always new ones coming up. So we can certainly have that in our back pocket.
So I think the studies on multifamily housing and school population show that they don't really affect the
don't.
school population.
No, and we had a 32 unit condo that went up in my hometown, and everybody worried about that. And the gentleman that was doing it had built the same building in a few other towns. And they asked him, they said, how many children have affected the school system? He goes, geez, I don't know. He came back after looking at all his buildings, did probably about 15, 0 were school age kids. I was shocked with that one. I thought there'd be a few.
Well, Madison Place, how many units are there? 200 or something? And they're 14 kids.
Yeah. And enrollments are going down, so this might actually be an even Steven. So, but we'll find those reports, absolutely.
I think the concern about traffic is valid because you can imagine with the, in addition to the dwelling units, you're going to have a buildup of services and shops and other areas, things in the area for people to do and restaurants and things like that. So, I mean, that's the point of this, is making a community where people can go out and get a pizza, walk around, grab a bite, go to the train. And so I'd be interested to know, is it, because I think people are going to ask about it, right? I think that's it. It's not really a concern. I think these areas can be very vibrant. But I can imagine that there's going to be shops and restaurants. And then what about parking and things like that? It's just part of the consideration of what else goes with, because it's not just going to be a bunch of houses. It's going to be other things built up in the area. If a developer can build something and people are there, they're going to build it, right?
Well, that's something, we don't have to allow the mixed use. As long as it's family by right, multifamily by right, but they do allow you to use the 40R, which does that, the mixed use and the multifamily. That's, I believe, a different zoning, but I would really have to look into that. I wasn't sure that Southwood would be akin to that.
Anything else on this? Any more comments or questions here?
Did we miss anything, Adam?
Anybody have
I'm sorry,
questions?
it's not your name.
Let's see, attendee.
James,
James.
I don't see any hands raised.
No hands.
Very good.
Good.
Thank you, Marnie, Colleen. Next is a discussion item, Public Works Planning Board. select board to abolish. So at our last meeting, we had a discussion that select board member Al Hamilton was charged with writing an article for town meeting to abolish the Public Works Planning Board, and the planning board as an appointing authority discussed that, and Debbie and I were charged with writing a letter to the select board to voice our opinion as an appointing authority that although we would support abolishing the Public Works Planning Board, it should be replaced with the bylaw committee that the town would have local control of. The reasons why we think that is necessary, and offering to work with the select board.
Note a copy of the letter, the draft letters in your packet. If you want to take notes or follow along or have anything to add.
So if anyone has anything else to add or any comments? Do you want to add anything to that, Debbie?
My only thinking was I initially was thinking a couple steps ahead, and what if they disagree, or their select board are looking for examples of like, well, what would we replace it with? But that gets into a whole rabbit trail, I guess, of other things. And I mean, I think it's short and to the point and shows our willingness to work with them, and that we really want to work with them, and that, we're hopeful that this process can make it better. So I'm interested to hear what the others have to say.
Mr. Stein?
This seems like a well-crafted letter that spells out, I don't see anything in here that I disagree with, so. I think that it would be, I don't really understand why it's being abolished personally, but no need to get into all that. I mean, the select board's gonna do what they're gonna do, and it does seem to me that based on the history of the Public Works Department, it would be good to have some sort of second set of eyes on the goings on. So I agree in general with the concept that if we abolish the PWPB, should be replaced with some other body. Thanks.
Ms. Houlihan?
Yeah, so thank you for drafting the letter. I think, again, it's to the point. I think it brings up a lot of really good points. I don't necessarily think you need examples of why. What I would say is that you should, as we've learned in sending communications to the select board, they tend to ignore those communications. So I would have like a call to action, like we'd respectfully request response to this letter to offer assistance by X date. And then, because I think we would need to know if they're not going to support that, if we would need to put forward a bylaw article to, if we would even be willing to, as a planning board, to put something in to replace if they're going to abolish.
If I could just add to that, I think I've mentioned before to this committee and to the public that there's a lot of, in addition to a lot of loose strings, let's say, of the Public Works Planning Board, because the Recycling and Green Technology Committee was rolled into it, and other things like that. The idea of this committee really predates something that Massachusetts did years later, actually. And there is a section of Mass General Law that's chapter 4169D through G. And instead of Public Works Planning Board, it's a section called Boards of Public Works. And although that doesn't really pertain to us, it's probably, it's the wording, I think, that's there that other towns could use or lift or take the whole section like wholesale. But one section that stood out to me is that the board powers, this is the boards of public works. The board's powers are with reasonable respect to duties of the DPW. So, and there's a lot of detail in there. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because just to answer Mr. Stein's question, the Public Works Planning Board has had a history of issues and problems. I've spoken to people from the 1990s that, you know, have said, you know, it was always problematic for a lot of reasons. And it's certainly just problematic now, but we can look around. I mean, I think what I would hope to get to the point with the select board is, why don't we look around at other towns and see what they're doing? And as I started to do that search, I started to see the words boards of public works, and I realized, oh, they're just adopting the law. And it's probably something that's, you know, in there that is probably more simple, and it's you know, it's not as complicated as ours, because ours brings into a lot of like kind of loose ends and things like this. And so, I mean, that is one thing that I hope we do get to that point. You know, how do other towns deal with it? And I would say nearly every town has a board of public works. They might call it something different than that. I actually haven't done the search in a while, but I think last summer when I was looking, I found virtually no towns that didn't have some sort of board or oversight committee. Some smaller towns was a little more flexible. They had a town engineer. It was like, come talk to the town engineer. And really the town engineer plays a very big role in this as the project manager. And when a lot of us ran for public office and planning board, because we have this notion that people have a right to know what's happening on their street. And today we see things happening that neighbors just don't know what's happening on their streets. So in a lot of towns, the town engineer is the public person who is tracking all of the projects. So if they don't have a really formal process, they have somewhere to go where people can check in and find out, when's my road going to get paved? Who do I talk to about this, you know, issue? And importantly also is the idea of a public forum, a public hearing, where the public is noticed. They can come out, they can talk about the water tower, they can talk about the road intersection changes, they can talk about all these things, and it's interactive. And we're really, really missing that. So by not replacing the Public Works Planning Board with something, it would be, I think, pretty detrimental. We're striving to get to a better place, and that better place is, you know, where the public is interactive with our town leaders, and we can talk about what's going on our roads and in town for matters involving the DPW. So I think that's what I think that we're striving for, and I think this is a great first start.
Thank you.
Mr. Litt.
Well, I thought I'd add a little bit to this particular conversation. I've been kind of poking at this since it first came up at the Board of Selectmen's meeting. I've sent out, you know, 2 of my famous emails on the subject, which have gone to the Board of Selectmen, and it's kind of gone to you folks as well. The feedback from the Board of Selectmen is that, yeah, they'll get around to this in a couple of months. They're not in any great rush to think about it, which means that any of us who think about it sooner have an opportunity to influence what happens. The second note that I sent around included a very short, 6-slide discussion of what's going on and sort of why. And I'd be happy to go through that with you. I know Karina has a copy, or, you know, I can project it. A lot of what is going on, I think, is due to frustration. I think, you know, you hear it from Debbie, you hear it from me. I've actually been to the few Public Works Planning Board meetings that have been held in the past 3 years, maybe one a year. But I think it's worth understanding sort of, you know, why that is, and I've tried to figure that out. So I'm happy to do that, you know, tonight or any other night if you're interested. What I'm trying to do is get the frustration out of the system and to see if there's a productive path going forward. The other thing I'll note is that this is entangled with the problems we have with the tree warden, and they really need to be solved as a bundled package. So you let me know your pleasure and we can take it from there.
We don't have the sharing ability tonight, so I don't think that
Well, I
the,
can project.
oh, you can?
I can project on this projector anyway, sure. Or
Does-
Karina can, because they have a copy. She has a copy.
I think, well, the planning board all has a copy. It was shared.
Right, well, there's probably a few words that should go with it, but it's up to you. I'm not trying to twist your arm here. Let's make an opportunity available.
Does anyone want to see slides, or do you think that you understood? Thanks, Tim.
So Mimi, you did send out the second one that went to you, right? Because I didn't get it till this morning, so I'm working my way through. Okay. I'll send it again. So everyone has it.
I found one short charge from the town of Westfield and their Public Works, their Board of Public Works charge is the Board of Public Works ensures the Department of Public Works is using their time and resources efficiently. They assist with setting policies and awarding contracts. That's pretty simple.
So the Board of Public Works under Chapter 41 is a completely different organization, and I don't know if the select board would go for it. It's an elected board that takes over the supervision for the DPW.
Right, no, I understand. It's a model that is a mixed, you can mix that up. Some towns have elected members together with appointed members and have used that part of that legislation to write kind of the job descriptions for the board members or DPW head. And we wouldn't need that in this town. It's just that it's good to know, I think, that what is the standard that towns are using, you know. So one of the things that plagues Public Works Planning Board is that there's not a you're not a focused charge. It's very, you know, kind of ambiguous. So the one that, you know, Colleen just read is super focused. And, you know, others say pertaining to the duties of the DPW. So if it's cemetery, trees, water, roads, that's what it pertains to. And it involves usually somebody to track the projects. So, I mean, it's not really rocket science because every town has a variation of it. And, you know, I think that this is an example where we would want to be like another town. Take the opportunity to say that we don't have a town engineer. And so we're using a contractor that could get very expensive, but my understanding of the role of the town engineer, and I've been an advocate that, you know, I think it's cost effective for us to bring a town engineer back in-house, is that that's the person that tracks the projects. So when it comes time for the board to meet, they run through the projects. And in fact, I've been told by somebody serving on one of our boards that's been a town engineer who has led those meetings, and it's the town engineer that leads the meetings. So it's very kind of objective. What are the projects? What's the state of the projects? How much are they funded? Are they, you know, in what % completion? And, you know, a spreadsheet goes out and people come and they talk about and ask questions. And we're just really missing that. We're just not functioning as a proper town. And I think we probably should say that the select board have a couple of members, Mr. Stivers and others, have indicated that they really wanted to wait for the new DPW chief to come in. DPW chief is in, and I mean, I don't personally feel that that person has to take on the weight of this on their shoulders. The person has enough to do running a DPW. And hopefully he has the experience to, you know, and can give input also, honestly, because I'm sure wherever he's worked, there's been some sort of board.
Right. Yeah, I would hope that they would get he's an engineer also. I would hope that they would get his input on what would be helpful to him. And we have the capital planning that does budgetary things. In my mind, this is more like a PR arm for the DPW. So the residents know what's going on with the DPW, and big public works projects you get to, you know, see and comment on, and changes are made based on resident input, and not things are just push through and all of a sudden your road's dug up. So with the addition of please respond in a time certain, everyone okay with sending that letter? Is that okay on planning board letterhead?
You can give me the exact text. and
Okay.
We'll update it onto planning board formal letterhead and then send it to for your review. So today's 8/14.
Okay, the next item, St. Mark's Stonewall and Tree Mitigation. I think this is Ms. Houlihan was charged with writing a letter to the select board on this one, which she did. Would you like to take this morning?
Sorry. Thank you. I was charged, or I volunteered to write the Southborough Select Board letter from our July 11th meeting. Expressing our concern that we haven't seen any plans. They originally said they would allow us to do major site plan. Town council advised them that we did not need to review the site plans for St. Mark's Triangle. But the select board had voted to let us at least see the plans to ensure that the mitigation for the stone wall and the tree removal that occurred in the beginning of this whole project was at least mitigated for in these plans. So I have updated the letter. So I took out the yellow highlight because Karina sent an email that actually specifically provided information. That was the May 2nd meeting where the select board voted as a tree warden to approve the commitment of the select board to replace 11 trees and approximately 100 feet of stone wall. So essentially this letter states like the background and it's a formal request to review the plans. What I do think we need to do maybe is soften Marnie's language in the last paragraph. So I basically state that as of last night's planning board meeting, we'd be sending this tomorrow. We have not received any plans and are unable to ascertain if the site plan plans address the stone wall and tree mitigation. The select board has failed to act on their promises. We respectfully demand to receive the St. Mark's Triangle plans no later than Friday, August 18th. As an elected board with obligation to uphold zoning laws and enforcement of violations, you have intentionally ignored the law and our obligations to uphold the law. Your lack of follow through sends a strong and disrespectful message that should draw immediate concern and worry from our town citizens. So as I said, this is rather strong in a true Marnie sense. So if you want to soften the language, but I do think, you know, we've made our statements public multiple times. And there's still been no action. So as we all know, on the May 2nd meeting, they voted to make sure that we would see the plans. On May 23rd, Ms. Cook at a select board said that they would submit the plans. Her exact quote was, Ms. Cook stated plans are moving forward with the park, noting the documents are complete and ready for submittal to the planning board for major site plan review. That was on May 23rd. On June 27th, Ms. Cook and Mr. Dennington appeared at our planning board and suggested they do not need to submit major site plans, but we also stated we'd still like to ensure that we saw the plans. So now here we are on August 14th, we've not seen the plans. So that's why my language is pretty strong.
Yeah, the 6/27 meeting, town council said that the select board would submit the plans informally. Ms. Cook agreed with that. Mr. Dennington did not want to speak for the board, but he has not put that on their agenda. They have not discussed it since June 27th.
I believe Mr. Stivers is in attendance. Can we elevate him to a panelist and ask him why we haven't received the plans yet? Sorry to put you on the spot, Sam, but
No problem at all, Jesse. The
You
simple
don't
answer is
clear
I
this
don't
up.
know. I remember the conversations that you refer to, and I've not heard it discussed at a select board meeting, but I can certainly inquire. So I don't know of any reason why we haven't done that, but again, I've not heard anybody say anything more about that.
so thank you, Sam. Appreciate that.
Sorry,
Um,
not really an answer, but that's all I know at this point. So.
No, it's better than not having any input at all, which, right now we're operating in a little bit of a vacuum and it's a little disconcerting. So it's hard to say, what how this language should be changed for me because I don't disagree with the paragraph in principle. I don't know.
And I know you're giving me that look, but I agree with it. We've had this discussion,
We could maybe
we've
add-
tried to be nice and it just haven't worked.
I-
And additionally, just as an aside, the bids that came in for the park were twice the budgeted, so they're being rebid. So there's time. It's not like we're slowing down the process at all. Additionally, it was concerning, they were talking about, removing the trees from the bid and seeing what shrubs and trees has left over at the end of the year, which would not be trees that are compliant with our town code. So this is getting worse and not better. So I agree with the language.
I agree with the language too. I think it's very well written, Marnie. I know of no example in town, so I'm just going to use myself as the example. I've served on recycling committee and master plan for a little bit, master plan implementation, zoning board, and now planning board. There's a couple of members of committees here, Southborough Accessibility and Technology Committee. I know of no committee that's been given and told what they can put on their agenda and what they should be, what purview they have. I can't even imagine, to be honest, this situation where, an elected board is told that they can't review something that they believe is within their purview. It's just a ridiculous situation. In the second paragraph, I actually would like to add some information that we disagree with town council. It's fine if that's the way select board feel, that town council advises that we do not need to have the plan for major site plan, but I do think we should note that, well, we disagree. And under any other circumstances, we would get that plan for review. And who is the select board to tell us that we can't review a plan that we think is within our purview? And we don't report to them. We're an elected board. So I actually think in the second paragraph, we should make it tougher and fight back that point as well. Maybe that detracts from the overall message, which I wouldn't want to do. But I think that we should state that we disagree. The reason that we're in this debacle, of course, is because the oversight was lacking. Is because the necessary boards and committees didn't have the opportunity to give input. Even the dysfunctional ones, such as Public Works Planning Board, which could have held public forums, public hearings, didn't have the opportunity or wasn't meeting. There's this feeling that the select board is just going to take the ball and run with it. That's why we have boards and committees, because we all have our own purview. So there might be a technicality, and maybe Mr. Tallerman is correct. But that's still not the right thing to do. I think that we need to tell them that's just not acceptable.
So I think to soften it a little bit, though. I would just like to insert the word, the select board seems to have failed to act on their promises excuse me. So it'd be comma. Sorry, no, back up. That's not grammatically correct. As the select board seems to have failed to act on their promises. comma. We respectfully demand to receive the same. Does that make sense? St. Mark's Triangle Plan is a matter of later than Friday, August 18th. As an elected board with obligation to uphold zoning laws and enforcement of actions. This is the part that I'm struggling with. You seem to have ignored the law. I think we just need to like take out that word intentionally and put. That's fine too. It appears you have ignored the law and our obligations to uphold the law. And I would strike the last sentence entirely and replace it with something along the lines of. The planning board would greatly appreciate. A more collaborative approach. And would be eager to hear an explanation for how we, how we've gotten to this point in this process.
How about maybe you're eager to receive the plans by Friday? Can we just be a little bit more direct?
Yeah, that's fair.
Debbie, did you want me to add in your language, or at least you want to read it? Because I actually agree. I think we should on our own letter state that we disagree with Attorney Tellerman.
Well, Attorney Tallerman made clear that he was speaking to advance the opinion of the select board.
They can have their opinion, and they can seek counsel. But I'm just saying, my point, and I guess that just stays with the committee. I guess we don't put that in the letter, but what board or committee is told by another committee what the purview is, especially one that we don't report to. So, I mean, I really think that we should just say we respectfully disagree,
Right,
that we have the purview.
I agree.
And I think, Mimi, you've made that clear in several meetings. So just a statement to that effect would be fine.
So. I'm kind of directing my question to Mimi and Karina. Have either of you had any communication with Mr. Purple on this matter? Has there been any attempt to discuss this, on a town administrative level?
No.
I just might suggest,
Mm.
so,
I mean, other than asking for the most updated plans, because we had it as an agenda item. And the select board was invited and Mark Purple was included in that invitation to attend, where Kathy Cook and Andrew Dennington attended
okay,
without a quorum.
okay.
So we did reach out in that regard. Did I physically go down and sit with Mark and speak to him about it? I haven't, but I can.
Okay. That's-
That's not, we do that on and off on various things.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that you do. I'm just trying to get,
Yeah, if it's helpful, I'm certainly open
understand
to doing that, so.
The first that we knew that they weren't going to submit for site plan was an email from Jay Tallerman to
Right,
Karina right before our last meeting.
right. Okay,
I'll send this over. So if you want to do final review and then send it over and put it on our letterhead.
Thank you, Marnie. Great letter.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Marnie.
Marnie, you're sending that to us. And then we'll formalize it on the right
I've added the comments that have been suggested, and all it just needs is maybe one
last.
editorial review.
Okay. Do you want that reviewed directly to you or to the planning board? You want it to go to all the members to give it a quick
I
review?
don't need that.
No, okay.
Do you need that, Debbie? I think
So
we're-
we'll draft it up and send it to you, Marnie, and copy Mimi as the chair. So she knows that we responded to you.
Yeah, and then Mimi, will you be sending this as the chair? Or do you want me to send? You should send as the chair, right? Okay.
Planning. Community signature. What board?
And you can put my electronic signature on it because I'm going on vacation tomorrow.
Okay. Using electronic signature.
All right, anything else on that? Anyone?
We have 5 attendees, no hands raised.
Okay. let's
And Mimi,
move on.
before you leave, I just would like to go over the comment on your letter to make sure we have the exact writing for that.
So the next item on the agenda is the 40Bs at 120 and 250. At our last meeting, we had said we would hold comment until after the site walk, and we have attended the site walk. So now we need to put together our comments for a letter to go to Mass Housing.
Can I just ask a question? Are the dates still the same or have they postponed the 250? Do we know that by 14 days because of the revised plan?
So we received that email copied from Mike Ferris, but I don't know if they've submitted new plans to Mass Housing. So I would say that we comment on what's before us.
Okay.
And then if something new comes along, we can comment on that. So the date's still the 18th as far as I know. Mr. Stein, would you like to start with comments?
Sure. Well, actually, the stewardship committee chair, Joyce Greenleaf, did a really good job in her letter. She actually kind of encapsulated or included my primary concerns with 120. That's the agenda item we're on, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I overheard a conversation between Freddie and Mr. Tatro, I think, during the site visit, when there was some dialogue between them about concern about lighting, and the proponent, essentially, oh, there you are. That was just really a remarkable discourse, because it seemed like the proponent's point of view is, well, this is, completely surrounded by trees. So what's the problem? And of course, those of us with environmental concerns do understand that the lighting is a concern for the natural habitat and for the wildlife and for, the biological system. So there was that. And I had some dialogue with Mr. Tatro about the stone wall that's mentioned in the stewardship committee's letter. The dialogue was to the effect that I was trying to understand how, if the stone wall is 5 feet from a retaining wall that's going to be built, how it could possibly remain undisturbed. And Mr. Tatro was adamant that it absolutely would remain undisturbed. And I just don't understand how that's possible. Let's see. Oh, and then I had a brief discussion with Dave Ferris about, asking if they would have a willingness to put a conservation restriction on the areas that are going to remain undisturbed. And Mr. Ferris at the time said he would be amenable to that. So that has not, been discussed in any public forum or meeting, but I had a positive reaction during the site walk. That's it.
Ms. Houlihan?
Yeah, so I did attend the site walk. I had to leave the 250, but in speaking to 120 Turnpike. So I of course am in support of trying to figure out how we do a better job at bringing in housing like what a 40B could offer. I agree. I think the stewardship committee's letter was very good in the sense that it kind of identified the implications on the environment and the population of animals, the lights, the deer population, some of the implications of some running water, I think were recognized on the site. And so it's just the clarity of how that will be mitigated. I think the letter did a really good job around the recommendations. I know their general opinion was not to support the development at 120 Turnpike. I don't think that's my opinion as a person on the planning board. I do support a lot of their recommendations in trying to mitigate certain things or to be able to make sure that things are done in a way that are protective as best as possible of the environment. I recognize that Southborough needs to embrace a community where we have a growing population in this world, and we kind of have to do our part to support that. So I'm generally in favor. I just do think they need to follow some of the guidance, and I can be a little bit more specific as to, you know, what those are if we wanted to include that in our letter.
Mr. Maria?
Well, I agree with the other members here on the environmental concerns that I have. I really dislike the idea that because there's not, you know, houses and abutters, that there's this feeling that this isn't, as Joyce says, the crown jewel of the town. And so I think that although that doesn't necessarily fall under the purview of the planning board, when we think about this, I think, you know, like practically, there have been a couple of, I did not attend the walk, by the way, but you know, I'm very, very much struck by some of the public comments that, you know, especially pictures of, you know, other towns or look, their 40Bs might look like, or why is this a 4-story instead of a 3-story? And I am thinking actually for 120, if Ferris is interested to listen to the neighbors, Ferris Development rather, listen to the neighbors about the size of the building, that it would be, you know, the really first full 4-story building in town. Why would we accept that also for the 120 property, because there's no neighbors around? So I would hope that, you know, that those comments sort of apply to 120, and maybe we should just, you know, make it known. Yeah, just, let's see, I have another comment. I guess I just also wanted to make the comment that the planning board, you know, to anybody listening, I guess the planning board is open to hearing comments from other people as well. I was struck by a comment made at the select board meeting where they had a public forum, which, you know, I looked up the definition because I didn't actually know, is that was supposed to be a hearing, or is it more than public comment, but not quite public hearing? But there wasn't, it wasn't fully noticed, but yet a large number of people came out to listen. And it was clear that the select board had a letter that was crafted and it was put into their packet. And I didn't do a document compare, but I do not believe they changed one word of that letter. So despite hearing concerns from the citizens, unfortunately, you know, they at least attached some of the letters, and the letter from Joyce Greenleaf and the committee was excellent, but it didn't sway the select board. And I think that's kind of too bad, to be honest. But I think that as a planning board, you know, we're different, and we have public hearings and we listen to the public. And so I would still invite, you know, members of the public to speak up. And or write letters separately. I know in the past, Marnie, you've advertised, please send it to this address and hopefully we can put that out there on our website for anybody that, is interested to send their own letter. But I think it's terribly important that we listen to the public as elected officials. We can't just make up what we want. And that appears to be what the select board did. They made up a letter, they had a public forum, and they didn't, I don't believe they changed a word in their letter. And maybe they were kind enough to, staple something to the back. So I think that, I'm looking forward to hearing, how this process plays out. But I just really urge the members of the public to, think about this is, not just in your backyard. It couldn't maybe, but it's in an area of town, one for 120, that is there for our enjoyment. And the town worked very, very hard, and this board and others worked very, very hard to make sure that, the abutting Breakneck Hill is there for everybody's enjoyment. So I do worry about that. I did send one thing to the board having to do with an old plan from way back when. I think it was before any of the A&Rs happened. And, I had questioned whether or not there was an abandoned road or a little tract of land. I'm curious and a little confused as to whether there's an easement or anything that would, interfere in any way with the proposed plan. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know whether the road was ever disposed of or anything like that, but is there an easement of some sort on that land? And it's right next to shrubs and trees, I guess, on the west side I think that's where it is today. And so that was just confusing on the map. And I don't see that on the current maps. I found that on an old map. And so that was just something if anybody has any information on that, I'd like to understand that a little bit more. Thanks.
So so it said discontinued road on the plan, so I assume it's discontinued. I didn't go back and look for the town meeting minutes for 1965, but thank you. I think that we should also mention the previous permitting on that lot, that there's a special permit that prohibits a third building. And that, aside from there can't be a third building if that lot remains one lot. It couldn't be part of the 40B because you can have ancillary non-residential development, but the two office buildings are a dominant use of the site, not ancillary. So that portion has to somehow be separated from the lot, which would require them to somehow amend their special permit because it was based on that entire lot. And there's no frontage, so it can't be an A&R. Even under 40B, which would allow the zoning board of appeals to waive local regulation, there's a state statute for a 20-foot frontage. So I think a subdivision needs to be done there. And I guess that can be done through the ZBA also, but just that should be out there that this process is, there are other steps that need to take place. It should, I think, should also be mentioned that, and everyone said it, that it abuts one of the most significant open space parcels in the town. And that residential parcel on that lot was also intended to be preserved as open space in a condition of a prior site plan. It was going to be donated to the Conservation Commission. And although the work wasn't, that was when they were going to put the parking garage there. And the work hasn't completed, but they did start it. They did some walkways, and so they have utilized the site plan. So they were supposed to give that to the Conservation Commission prior to the expiration of the site plan, which was in 2019, so it would have been in 2020. my other comments, the 4-story building, we don't have any other 4-story buildings in town. The balloons that Joyce mentioned, so people could see how tall that actually is. And that video that was on the Dropbox, that was a stream that goes right through where that building is supposedly placed, and that they didn't want us to walk during the site walk. Preservation of as many trees as possible. Anything else?
So those are all comments regarding 120.
Yes.
Okay.
Who's drafting the letter?
Well, if you send me the list of them, I can draft it formatted similar to the prior
Okay.
one that we did. I just need the comments because I don't
Okay.
have them all written.
When are comments due?
18th.
On the 18th, that's Friday. Right?
So do you need each of us to send our comments individually, Karina?
Yes, if they're not, even if they're redundant, I can put them together. That would be helpful.
What's today, the 14th? When do you want them? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Probably gives you
or
time to,
Wednesday. Well, tomorrow's pretty booked
Booked.
already.
okay.
But just, get them to me as soon as you can, no later than noon on Wednesday. Then I can start setting it up, because I'd also like to send it out to the board. Or send it at least to Mimi. You can see it on your phone, right? Or you'll have access to that.
I have internet now up
You-
in New Hampshire.
Just so that
It's showing the
haven't
20th
listened.
century.
what I'll do is once I draft it, I will send it to all board members with a do not reply all. And you just provide me your comments and I'll make heads or tails of them. And
Okay.
but I need the initial comments
I,
first. as
I
soon
already
as
have
possible.
them, so I'll just send this. I already
Yeah,
have them.
that would be helpful.
Hi,
Ms. Gillespie.
yeah, hi, I'm Freddie Gillespie, 78 Southfield Road. I'm speaking as a private citizen who sits on two commissions one commission and a committee that is commenting on this. And I want to be sure I'm clear that I'm speaking as a citizen right now, because some of my comments have not been discussed in commission or committee. I wanted to start by saying and I'm only speaking to the 120, 118 with we've been involved with open space protection on that parcel for a long time for even before the
Parking
Large.
garage.
project, when a project next to it put an office park in there, and we ended up getting 2.5 acres of additional land, which now abuts this property. That was part of the agreement for the office building going on the residential land back when we had a use variance. And one concern I have is, I've been on the Open Space Commission for a long time. And as a private citizen, I'm also very much an advocate for affordable housing. And I worked really hard for a period of maybe a year with every board and committee in town and every nonprofit to get a 25-acre parcel of land purchased to go to town meeting to see if town meeting would purchase using CPA funds. Every board and committee, I think there were 7 of them in town, said go to town meeting, and all except for one, I believe, said and protect it. And the one that didn't was the planning board said they didn't feel they had the authority to recommend, but they wanted town meeting to, plus 2 nonprofits in town, the Historical Society and the South Broken Land Foundation. This was 25 acres, and the majority of it would have been for affordable housing. And we worked really hard to get this done, and it was the select board who said no to going to town meeting. So I just get frustrated when people say, you know, you're anti-affordable housing when you want to protect land. Because they're both important, and we don't have that much land left to protect. We don't have that much land left that's affordable. And when we do get a opportunity, you know, the choice is made not to go to town meeting. And if we had done that, maybe we could have satisfied these affordable housing needs and not be at the risk of, that was 25 acres. We could have done the type of planned development that the town would have found more acceptable than a 4-story tall building. So there's a lost opportunity. I'm only bringing it up, it's hindsight, but, you know, because I keep hearing, you know, well, environmental, but there's no one, you know, there's no abutters and you can't be for the environment and against housing. Doesn't quite work that way in the big picture. And the situation with this parcel is, it is critically important. It had been slated for open space protection in the past. Supposedly, there's a special permit and a variance. It's not clear which takes precedence, which one said you can't have another building on the lot. And the lot is the whole lot. Doesn't say it can subdivide or, you know, cut a chunk out and then put a building on that portion. So the fact, what this happens is when you go and get a variance, special permit, what the townspeople need to know is that it's meaningless in the future, right? You work hard, you get it done, and then, oh, well, you know, forget that. And, you know, that doesn't seem right. So I guess what we need to do in the future is make sure you get conservation restrictions, deed restrictions, all of those things to be sure that things are protected the way you think they are when you get these permitting done. The other thing I'd want to mention is that it occurred to me, if this becomes a subdivision, you're now subject to the subdivision requirement of 10% open space. Now, I don't know how that works with the 40B because the subdivision isn't the 40B, it's to create the lot. So at least the other 2 lots or 1 lot has a requirement to ante up the open space somewhere there, 10% of the entire property. And if not, someone's going to have to waive that bylaw if it's waivable. I don't know if CBA can do that, but that 10% isn't the 40B. You know, the 40B is exempt from town bylaws, but this is a parcel that's not 40B being subdivided. I'm sure it has to get town council's opinion, but it needs to at least be addressed. I wanted to say the Open Space Commission had a meeting. We have the outline of a letter. We were never included on any notices about this. Heard it secondhand. The only email I got was forwarded, and it said, should you like to, this is from Mark Purple, should you like to include comments from your board or committee in any packet going out from the select board regarding this matter, please have all comments sent to the select board's office no later than the end of the day on Tuesday, August 15th. We were never notified of a public forum. And the only reason the stewardship committee got their letter in on time, because we had met previously to draft it. We had a meeting. It was, you know, just the luck of the draw that it was on Monday night. And the only reason we knew about the public forum is because it was listed in the My Southborough. And Selectman Hamilton wrote in a comment letter that I was at the site walk, so I knew about the public forum. But I didn't hear anything about the public forum at the site walk. We were never told that you had to have your letters in by last Tuesday. So our letter will not be included. We can send it to, you know, housing directly. But it just shows that there's not an effort of collaboration here once again. So we will have a letter that's lucky, which had many of the same comments the Open Space Commission would have, the Open Space Preservation Commission. The stewardship only got their letter in just by chance because we happened to be meeting Monday night and I read about it in the blog. It's not the way to do town government. So I would say that the issue about the subdivision is important, I think. The issue, the running water, I don't know if that's my video. I may have mistaken where exactly underneath the building the water's running, because we only, at the site walk, we only got to the the northernmost edge of the property. And the southernmost is way up the hill. You couldn't even see the flags from where we were, but that water is definitely, and from what I can see from where the stakes were, I took pictures. So where the stakes were in that picture, that water is flowing underneath at least a portion of the building. Whether it's jurisdictional, the concern I have for the open space is if you block that up, what's going on upstream? That water's flowing from somewhere under the conservation land because that's the only thing uphill from the property. So what's going to happen if you block that up or you dig it out? Is it going to erode or have consequences to the conservation land? And I think that needs to be addressed. I think that what we keep hearing is these things will be addressed at the ZBA. And then conservation will weigh in and if it's jurisdictional or not. But that was flowing like, you know, and that was almost 4 days after a rain event. So, you know, I don't know, it's not a stream bank, I was told at the, by the consultant there, but, you know, it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. At least somebody should be looking at it, I think. And I think you have most of the Open Space Commission's comments are very similar to what the Stewardship Committee put in, but we still would have liked the opportunity to have been able to be included in the Selectmen's packet. And, you know, we got robbed of that opportunity by not being notified. So thank you.
Ms. Paniff.
The latter. I do not attend any of the forums and I'm not on any committee. Are any of the letters have any positive comments about 120 or 250 from any board before I go on? I'm sorry, I haven't seen your letter. I did discuss with a member of the Board of Selectmen. I think we need to consider the location as a positive thing for the town. It has an east-west sidewalk on Route 9, which is unusual for any area of this town. It has small businesses that could help, the residents could help with the economic growth of the community. I know it's next to a conservation site, but I do sit with a lot of individuals that have sold their homes in this town and had one option to remain in this town as a renter, somebody that's downsizing, somebody that might need medical assistance living with them. This has multiple options for a lot of us that want to downsize. It also has walkability to the trails, to the conservation land for some of us that want to continue to be healthy in this town and can support that type of activity. So I think we need to be aware that there are individuals that location might suit their needs as far as going to a drugstore, going to a restaurant, walking, which you cannot do in most areas of this town. So it does have a lot to offer. I'm not going to get into the negative details, but I hope somebody's looking at the benefits of this site as well. A 4-story building, I'm not in favor of a 4-story building. I know there are some complications with what we have now. There's no elevators in those buildings for anyone with a handicap issue moving in and out of a building. So that should be considered as well when we're looking at plans. But that's all I have on 120. I do have questions on 250. And I am an advocate for affordable units, affordability in this town. I have been, people know I am. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice again. But I hope we're adding some of the benefits that it might offer to a population in this town that want to remain in this town. Thank you.
And I want to thank Bonnie for those comments, because I did want to also say that while the Open Space Preservation Commission had concerns about the environmental impact of this building, we had concerns about, first, is it legally allowed? Which has nothing to do with if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Is it legally allowed? And is it environmentally allowed given the water running through where they're putting the building? Our commission had discussed and said, you know, can you shrink the building? Push it back away from the wetlands, I mean, from the buffer of the town, the conservation land. The concern that there's lots of trees there, there's not going to be lots of trees there after they cut them all down. You know, there's not a lot of trees on the others, on the conservation land side of the property, on at least one on the east side. So the other issue is, we also were very careful to say we wanted to be welcoming to the, if, when it gets built, to the residents, making sure there were pathways into the property. So it wasn't like we were just saying, keep out, stay out. It's, is it legally possible to build? And two, if you're going to build it, can you make it more environmentally conscious and be abiding by the town's bylaws, specifically the, we want it even better than what was we suggested, recommended, even better than the town's light bylaw, but at least at a minimum adhere to that. But we know when that went to town meeting that you had compromised to make it palatable, that, you know, there is stricter dark skies criteria that we could have put forth. And we asked for, like, you know, moving the parking away so the lights weren't as close. We asked for, you know, safety lights at night so you're not shining the lights all the time. But I mean, if you walk down the trail at Breakneck Hill, you can hear someone if they're gargling in their bathroom. It's that, I mean, maybe they have good soundproofing, but it is really a close building. And if you have lights there and the parking's even closer, we asked for those sorts of things. So it wasn't like we were, don't do it at all. But these questions need to be answered.
Yeah, I think that's an important point on whether it's legal because as everyone knows, Southborough has the dubious distinction of having one of two comprehensive permits revoked in the state. And the reason why was because something was put forth that was not allowed within the statute. So we just want to make sure that whatever we do is following the correct procedures and process. Anyone else?
Yeah. We have 5 attendees in the waiting room, no hands raised.
This is just on 120.
Just on 120, we're doing 250 next.
Can I just make a comment? I just want to take the opportunity to say that our town has the Department of Energy stretch goals. And these are green energy building codes. And this state of Massachusetts has put out a specialized opt-in goal that the town could elect to opt into, which would affect both residential and non-residential projects. And what it would allow would be, it would mandate that there would be electric vehicle parking spaces, among other things. Just as a planning board member, it's just a consideration as we've got, potential couple projects coming into town, that we don't have that as part of our site plan. And it's also not covered under the building codes, under the stretch goals. And these are specialized goals. And I just would want to put this into the public because, as we're thinking about building, we can look up to Madison Place right now and you can count the number of electric vehicles. Do you know why? Because there's no electric charger units up there. There's no plugins for any electric vehicle. So I don't know if anybody has one, but they can't charge it. So in the future, I think soon I'd be an advocate to, make sure that that we have the specialized Department of Energy goals so that our planning or our building codes mandate that they put in electric vehicle charging. Thanks.
Do you want to request that in our comments for 120 and 250 that they include some EV parking spaces?
I would love that. And, I've asked a couple of the developers in the past and many have, the car condos and others have said, yes, we do intend to put that in. So I think they're a little, kind of more progressive than we are. But yeah, maybe they're planning on it. I don't think I've asked, I don't think we've asked them. Yes, I think that'd be great.
Okay.
And I'd like to also update our town code at some point. but we'll table that one.
That we're not doing tonight. So I think that's that on 120. Now, 250. Do you want to kick us off, Jesse?
So my concerns or comments with 250 are, really about the abutters, their position on this, and making sure that they are heard. And then impact into the immediate areas, is mitigated to as best as possible. I had asked during the site visit if there had been any correspondence or communication with Mass DOT, and they said it was too early. So we just have a ways to go, in my opinion, on this one. Be curious to hear what other board members have to say. Thanks.
Ms. Houlihan?
Yeah, so my question, I think we have some permitting questions specific to whether they even can develop on that property. Specific to that, whenever it was 1985 or something, there was a document around that parcel of land. And then it was the access to Route 9, where they now have to cut through the other lot, which is another question. I was able to get out at the site plan, but I also did a separate walk around. And when the abutters had come into the meeting to make some of their concerns, they also noted running water on what is that? East side of the property, running down in that. And again, like, it's not on their plans. And so it's just a little concerning that I didn't think their plans were all that comprehensive in showing the impact of some of the wetlands. There's quite a bit of wetlands where they're proposing the build out. And then I think I think similar concerns, it's a 4-story building. I don't think we really need a 4-story building. And I think I'm less concerned with 4-story here just because it's literally right on Route 9. But I still think about like the fire truck and service and all of those types of things where we're just not equipped to service those types of buildings. And then I would echo Mr. Stein's point around just making sure the abutters points that they raised, and a PowerPoint presentation was presented, and we had some letters that I think we can incorporate some of their feedback in. But those are my primary concerns with the location.
Thank you, Mr. Maria.
Well, I'm a little more positive about this location, actually, simply because it's right on Route 9 and the access to Route 9 and not sensitive roadways. I, share the sentiments of the other members of the board. I am concerned about the legal aspect with the, I think it is a special permit, correct? When I was listening to the public testimony from some of the residents and abutters in the nearby neighborhoods, talking about sort of the agreements that happened in the past and kind of just listening to the history. This is really more than a gentleman's agreement. And this is the problem that I have is that, if a condition of approval is not taken seriously, then what is it that we're all doing? What is it the ZBA does and what is the planning board doing? So, I take that as a condition that it has to be dealt with. It has to be, the developer has to find a workaround or do some work, because I think that's a significant hurdle right now. And I think that these things have to be taken really seriously. So that's just my feeling on it. Thanks.
So could somebody explain the legality piece?
So there was a special permit in 1990 in the that was granted with the following restrictions. There shall be no building erected on the residential A lot 2, which is that portion that it's being. There shall be no egress allowed on from the property onto Parkerville. That a 20-foot buffer of wooded area be maintained where residential properties meet. And there are a couple other things that relate to the building that don't really relate to this, but
I think I was confused because I knew that there was some issue with constructing an additional building on one of the two sites, but it seems like there's issues with that on both of them.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and to Debbie's point, they came before I think it was the ZBA in this case, received a special permit so they could build a building. And these are the conditions. The building's not going to go away, but all the conditions go away. It doesn't make sense to me. Additionally, yeah, I have concerns with the 4-story building because as of right now, we did receive that email that say they intend to do something about it. But as of right now, they're going to fill 20 feet. So it's going to be a 6-story building. Which when on the site walk, you can see all the abutting houses just standing on the site. So they will, have a clear view looking right into the side of that building. Also, the design of the building doesn't really fit within the character of the neighborhood. I think they can do something to make it look more house-like rather than apartment building-like. Definitely need to have some substantial screening, dark sky compliant lighting with no trespass on abutting properties. And I'd also like to see them do the balloon test so people could have an idea of what it would look like.
Thanks. Just a quick question is who does resolve the special permit and the conditions of the property? Like, where does that get elevated to?
It goes to the ZBA and I assume our town council.
So that actually is a good segue to something that I was going to bring up that, and I want to be as respectful as possible because I, for one, only have so many hours and so many brain cells and there's a lot going on. So I don't have the time necessarily to devote as much energy to my municipal service as I would like to. But having said that, I was concerned that not a single member of the Zoning Board of Appeals attended these site walks. And this is the governing, the ultimate authority on this. And I was also, couldn't help but notice that there was not a full select board present at the site walk. But maybe more importantly, I'm going to include in my comments to Karina that we've had issues in the past with the way that the zoning board has handled this process. This is going to be a very complicated endeavor. And we really need the engagement to be strong in order to have an understanding of what is going to be involved here. Otherwise, as Mimi brought up, these things can be appealed after the fact and revoked. And it doesn't have to go that way. There's a path that, where if things are done right, you don't have the post closing litigation. So I'm gonna just recommend that going forward, the ZBA take a more proactive level of engagement. Thanks.
Far be it from me to defend the select board, but Mr. Hamilton was away. Everyone else was there. And he went on a private site walk with the Ferrises. And one more thing I forgot to mention, there's a vernal pool there too. That they checked off no on their application, but through the previous process through the Conservation Commission, there were egg masses of obligate species in those jurisdictional bodies, so.
Right. And I really mean no disrespect in my comments, and thank you for explaining that, Mimi. And I'm not trying to stir the pot. I'm just saying, if people are gonna be involved at the level of being the permitting authority on an extremely critical, high level, complicated, huge project in this town, please be engaged in the process. Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Anyone?
I'll try to be quick. I left my soapbox at home. Good evening again. I'm James Nichols Worley, 94 Main Street. And since I'm more familiar with the site at 250 than the one at 120, I wanted to speak in favor of this one, but my comments apply to both, I think. And I want to echo the power of considering the positive aspects of these projects, because we live in a world of trade-offs. I think it's very important to consider that a lot of some of the negative aspects about these sites are not only being considered by a disinterested analysis. I think a lot of the points, especially at 250 Turnpike, brought up by the abutters is very interested, which is natural, but we need to consider as more neutral arbiters, we need to weigh the positive aspects and the negative aspects. And just as an aside, if I understand chapter 40B correctly, the comprehensive permitting, these applications are like a hydra. You cut one down. The new numbers came in for Southborough's affordable housing stock, I believe is under 8%, and we have a 10% target. So these could pop up anywhere. If we're worried about traffic, well, if these are spread out across smaller developments, well, there could be more cars, larger multi-unit homes. And forgive me, I sent out an article with my comments, but it was very short notice, so I just want to reiterate them. Multi-unit buildings have fewer cars than smaller homes. They're more energy efficient. They obviously have a smaller land footprint per unit. So I think that's important to consider. And as for the interest of the affected parties, I don't want to go entirely off of hearsay here, but I was at the public forum last week, and I recall, and this is my recollection, but some of the comments from the abutters specifically used the word unfair, that this was unfair to the neighborhood. And I don't think that's the case. We don't consider tearing down any buildings in town because of the way it affects the neighborhood character or because it might improve the local environment. We don't consider tearing buildings down. We don't consider the aggregate effect of over 9,000 acres of development since 1945 into our forests and farmlands of single family homes. We don't generally have public forums and major site review for a lot of single family homes as we do for multi-unit buildings. I think that's important to consider. You know, besides just considering the positives, I want to elaborate on something I haven't publicly posted before, and that is on the consequences of delay. Now, you obviously know about the last time Southborough got sued all the way up to the Supreme Judicial Court and lost. But there's another time in 1976 to 1977, whose annual reviews I have gone back and looked into, when Southborough changed its zoning law of things that were prohibited from being built in town. gold mines, junkyards, fur farms. And in 1976, Southborough's all-town meeting voted to ban abortion clinics in town. And so an interested clinic wanted to open one up here in town. They sued the town. And in 1977, they won in the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court. Now, in the 1977 annual town report, it's labeled that there were no costs for it, that I assume it was taken care of town council on their regular budget. But there's a comment in the annual report that the select board decided not to appeal to the US Supreme Court. But it's important, I think, that the town won at that point. By the time that case had been settled, the property had been rented out to another tenant. And I think it's very important to consider the consequences of dilatory action, of delay, of pushing back on something using only the negative aspects of it. When we delay, we can cause unforeseen consequences. And I think that if you're not in favor of this, as I think some of the abutters have said publicly they are, it doesn't really matter about the legal position. It doesn't matter if there's a covenant on one of the properties. It doesn't matter if there was a 1990 restriction on the property. One of the abutting roads, Sarsonstone Way, was, I believe, only created in 1991, which would have been a year after. Those aren't as important as generally, those are tools towards an end. They're not being weighed neutrally. So that's why I think it's so important to consider these positives. Maybe it's because I'm too naive, maybe I'm a little green, but I think that the character of our neighborhood is more about the people and less about the size of the buildings. So I hope you'll consider this, especially because public comment is weighed heavily against those who have a direct interest, but not those who have an indirect interest, not those potential 110 families who could live at these sites. There's no one to speak for them. But surely, since 1945, when we've added 8,000 people to Southborough, we're glad our houses have been built. We should invite new neighbors in. Thank you.
I have to take exception with your remark that we don't do diligence on single-family homes. We have done numerous subdivision reviews since I've been on this board, always taking into consideration the pluses and minuses to an impact to the community and the abutters and the environment. So that statement was not correct. Thank you.
Should I go or? I apologize. I do not mean any offense to the planning board. I was speaking more in general of public reaction to it, because clearly there's a lot more single family homes in Southborough.
Yep, thank you, James. Personally, I'm neutral on both of these, and I just think that they should be done correctly, and certain things should be, brought up and addressed to make sure that those 110 families can live in a building that doesn't crack up the middle because it has a stream running underneath it. So that's the position I'm taking. Plus, it needs to fit in the neighborhood, and the abutters that have lived there should, be offered some screening and not have lights shining into their house. So that's how I look at it, to make it work, the pros and cons, and make it work for everybody.
Thank you very much. And thank you again for the work you're doing. I really don't mean any disrespect to the planning board. I think this is more a matter of how the town as a whole, as the body politic sees it. I'm very confident that the board has been very diligent in its work. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. We certainly haven't done well with affordable housing. I think everyone would could acknowledge that. Ms. Banas.
Bonnie Faniff, 179 Middle Road. I hope we learn from the past errors of all of us. I think the legal question should be asked now before it gets to the zoning board. I do have questions. Again, I did not attend any meetings. And I'm do not believe my son's on the abutter list, either on Parkerville Road. But the property itself, my understanding is it's two parcels. 1 and 2, A and B, or whatever you want to call it, with a septic system on Turnpike Road. Correct? With that facility or with the residential facility? It was hard for me to figure it out.
I don't know if there's a easement for this.
I think it's on the storage facility.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
The storage facility? It's on the residential? Is the storage facility connected to it at all? Right, the question goes for both then. It's a shared facility. If one party sells, if the individual owner sells one of those parcels, legally, who has ownership of that shared system and the maintenance? And does it require a bond? Because I worked on Wedgewood when that was being developed for 272 units. The second question, there's an IMA between Sulphur and Hopkinton for the water that was approved at town meeting with upgrades from Turnpike Road to Fairview, a new 12-inch water main. Are they connecting off of Parkerville Road or off of Route 9? That should be discovered before the road is dug up and repaved. And does it impact the study that the town and Hopkinton is doing as far as the additional upgrades? There should be a bus stop there if there's any desire to get to the train station, since you're talking about the MBTA stop. The other thing that we talk about walkability, which I don't believe any area of this town is walkable. I don't walk the side streets. I hope some consideration is considered as far as the 255 and older developments we have on that street. One in Wedgewood and one at the corner of Parkerville and Southwood. There's 255 and older communities on that street. There's also a bridge abutment, which was the old trolley tracks. That's on a diagonal, and the width is narrower than the street, and there's no markings on that bridge abutment. So that should be considered. So I think legally we need to know if the current owner sells any one of those two sites, who has the legal authority of that septic system where it's shared? And is there a gate on the proposed storage facility that opens and closes and lets you in the area, which originally there was? So I don't know how you're going to get into this with a gate without backing up Route 9. And that was my understanding originally, could have changed. So that should be checked, and is on Middle Road from Route 9 to my home and Leeds Way, and on Parkerville Road, the south side, they're wells. So will there be any blasting there? As far as the fire codes, they're all sprinkled. Thank you.
Thank you. That's another point is, does this property, like the other one, 120, does 250 have frontage on Route 9? It doesn't, right? If it does?
Well, it has to cut through
It has to cut through
the parking lot,
the parking lot.
right?
Oh, it's an
Oh, yeah,
easement
yeah,
through
yeah.
250? They're doing an easement, right, through their own property, to
Yeah.
be able to give frontage. That's
So,
correct.
so they did an A&R that showed frontage on Parkerville for
On-
that lot.
On Parker,
But,
right?
but the access is proposed to be from Route 9 through the storage facility parcel.
Okay.
And the septic is on the industrial.
Oh, it is on.
I
Oh,
think
she was
lot.
right. Okay.
So
What-
if the property is sold, I guess the ownership of the septic system would need to be legally written out for a decision.
Or they'll do one on the residential for that portion. It's hard to tell from this plan.
And the size of the septic system determines the occupancy and the use. and there is a special permit on the storage facility with a shared septic system. Would they go through the whole process again for additional units?
They'll have to.
They would have to go to the Board of Health. For the septic, all would go through the Board of Health.
Nobody has, as far as I know, it has not been discussed what the capacity of that system is for how many units.
This is, I have to plan, but this one.
Is there a water treatment facility for that whole septic though on the residential? Wasn't there something? It's a drainage, shared
For
drainage.
the two.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Mm. Okay.
Thank you. All good points.
Anyone else? So do you want us to send you all our comments?
Yes, please. Okay.
And I don't see anyone in the audience with their hand raised.
And again, we'll submit for 250 on the same timeline as the 120 right now because we haven't been given any further notice.
Yeah, I think we should go with what's before us and Bonnie, by the legal issues, you mean all the restrictions that on the conditions on the site plan? Or the special permit?
On 250?
Yeah.
Since you read them, I see no harm in asking the question. Go to Mr. Purple and ask for a legal.
Yeah.
opinion. That's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to culminate all the comments that the planning board members provide me. I won't be adding anything from my notes because they're quick, so I'm gonna count on that your comments come to me complete and I'll assemble them.
Mimi, Ms. Vaniff brought up a very good point of being able to get the legal stuff weeded out before this whole thing starts. Should we elevate our list of concerns? Maybe after we get the letters written to be able to address directly to Mr. Purple through town council on both properties around the concerns that we have relative to the special permit on 120 and the conditions of approval. And then on the 120 on the third building, and then on 250 with the conditions of the land.
So we did ask town council on both of those.
Did we have a response?
Yeah, there was a back and forth email response. So when we were permitting the storage facility, those questions came up and he opined that they were still valid unless the zoning board overturned them. Is that what?
I have to look back because it's not really clear when I get the answer, but we have all the documentation, so we can check that.
It seemed fuzzy to me, if I recall, Mimi. I didn't remember
It was
seeing
fuzzy and
anything
it
was
was in
very
relation
clear.
to the storage, so I don't know how it would affect the 40B. Yes, Bonnie.
Should the legal opinions be public, 120 and 250? Since there's outstanding and you have ongoing conversations, anything in writing?
We have quick answers in email. There isn't a formal legal opinion. No,
I'd ask for a form.
I tried. So the opinion on 120 was that couldn't do an A&R, would need to do a subdivision, and the zoning board could handle that. And that mass housing doesn't really care about access.
sorry, just one more clarifying question, but on 120, nothing's been raised, so we need to raise that around the third building.
Those were that's the answer I just gave you.
Wait, I thought that was 250.
No, that was 120.
Wait,
250 was about access on Parkerville. The restriction of a more restricted use onto a less restricted use onto a more restricted use zone. So going from industrial to residential, that parking.
okay.
Yeah, and no building on the, and we can look it up further tomorrow if you want, and we can reach out to you. Send you the emails. They probably are in the Dropbox.
I have them. I think it's just not resonating for me where we stand.
No, there's so many small
Right,
answers to that. so-
okay.
Ms. Gillespie.
Did I just hear that town council offered the opinion that Mass Housing doesn't care if lots are legally buildable
No, they don't care about access.
access? How you get to the lot?
Yeah.
But 120, 118, the question is it a buildable lot? Has he offered an opinion on that?
His opinion was they need to do some type of a subdivision because you can't do an A&R because it doesn't have any frontage. And state statute requires at least 20 feet. So the ZBA can waive local frontage requirements, but they can't waive state statute, which is 20 feet. So they'd have to do some type of a subdivision, which the ZBA can also handle through the 40B comprehensive permit process.
Back to my question though, it's a big parcel. The subdivision is of the entire parcel, which falls under town zoning requirements, not the 40B section, but the big parcel. So is that a question you could ask? Because that triggers the 10% open space requirement. And it's not, in my opinion, which I'm not a lawyer, but my opinion, it's not the 40B because you're subdividing a non-40B parcel to create the 40B lot, but the remaining portion of the parcel is not 40B. So it needs to comply somehow with local zoning, wouldn't it?
That's a very good legal question.
So would that be something you might ask? Thank you.
I'm sorry, you'll just have to reiterate that question to me. I didn't, or I'll watch the video again, see what you just said. I was trying to find the town council opinion here. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on this one? So the next item is a discussion item, which I understand they have asked to continue to the next meeting. So I don't have to recuse myself.
That's correct. We're going to reschedule them to the 28th of August.
Next time. So that brings us to planners report.
I'm still, I'm trying to find the bandwidth to do my final review of the zoning map. I just have to confirm that the zoning boundaries that were represented on the updated map actually match, whether it's the center of the road or the property line. So I just need to find room to do that, but that's coming. I wanted to point out that we do have the ARPA funds for fiscal year 24 that relate to MBTA communities. What was the other thing? Oh goodness, the zoning update, a third phase of the zoning map update. If we find any additional things that weren't approved in 2006 or 2021, which was the downtown district. So I've reached out to Mass Audubon, who has done the original, the other part was the deed research database. So I reached out to Mass Audubon to see if they would be interested in providing a proposal for updating the database, which we use a lot from 2000, I think it was up to 2015 previously. So that's in the beginning stages. So I'm trying to work something on that. So that's coming down. We also received. So we also received an update on the subsidized housing inventory based on year-round housing units, which leaves us with 77 units required to meet the safe harbor threshold of 10%. So that's good. And
There's also, we can say
yeah, and also just to note that you can reach safe harbor with the, we have a housing production plan from 2020, which is good for 5 years. And if you build a certain amount of homes every year that qualify, that also lets you reach safe harbor. And that's in the certifying letter. And all that's on the town website, under the planning board website. You can see those documents under affordable housing. So if anyone has questions on that, but we were waiting for that those final numbers, and they did come through. And that's it. And we have one set of meeting minutes. And that is for July 10th, 2023.
Make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes from Tuesday, July 10th as written.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Tamiria, yes.
Anything else?
The next meeting is Monday, August 28th. I'll just let you know that we have received applications for the St. Mark's School parking lot, which I'm going to review for completeness. We're also in the process of getting a minor site plan application. I'm doing the pre-application review right now for 28 Turnpike Road, which is a retail on the first floor, residential on the second floor, and they're going to do a change of use from retail to office on the first floor.
So there's 2 public hearings.
Not yet. I'm just reviewing the applications, and then those will likely be, the minor will likely be on the 28th of August, and the major site plan for the St. Mark's is targeting for September 11th.
We have a meeting on September 11th.
We do.
I may not be present for that. I just realized.
Okay,
So
Well-
if there's a way to
we can do a Mullins for the.
do some, really?
Yeah.
okay.
Or we can see if they want to, if they want.
Yeah, I
to-
apologize for the inconvenience. I have a professional commitment.
Yeah,
that-
I can reach out to St. Mark's if they have a problem with extending it, having only 4 planning board members to start, but we can also do the Mullins form for you, where you can just review the video
Okay.
and the information and file that form, and then you'd still be good to go for the continued public hearing.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Tamiria, yes.
Exactly.
Look at that.
You guys just have to sign the 42 Central Street approved plans. They're not very